Let me explain this case to you here in Georgia. It's based on data actually from a friend of mine who surveyed the actual list of people who voted in Georgia with the list of registered voters and has come up with the names of people who are presumed to be ineligible to vote but voted anyway. These are either people with felonies that haven't cleared up their felon record, or they've moved out of state and they voted in other states. In fact, I know for certain one person has been now confirmed to have voted in two different states. There are people who have moved out of state and have obtained residency in other states, thereby making them presumed ineligible to vote in Georgia. There are people who possibly are dead who voted. Now, what the state will have to do is provide a rational basis for showing that these people did vote. The presumption, of course, will be on the plaintiffs. All the state has to do is say there's their rational reasons and document some of those reasons, and that maybe they haul people in and have them testify as to the legitimacy of their vote. But this is actually in the 50 plus cases. This is the first time the Trump campaign has actually put forward a case that is actually predicated on real voter abnormalities in the election, that could have a real impact on the margin of victory, and that could have, therefore, a real impact on the outcome in the state. Now, Democrats will dismiss this one like all the others, and I've been very dismissive of all the cases for a variety of reasons. They're deeply flawed, including the case in Pennsylvania, where the remedy they seek, I think, is too extreme, and I think the Supreme Court would ultimately find the remedy was too extreme. Essentially, they want the Supreme Court to throw out 200,000 votes in Pennsylvania, and I don't think the Supreme Court is going to throw out 200 votes when the voters were told by the government their votes were lawful, even if they weren't. If a voter thinks his vote is lawful, the presumption under election laws in this country is that if a voter thinks his vote is lawful and it's not, the vote can be thrown out. If the voter thinks his vote is lawful and the government tells the voter his vote is lawful, then the presumption is you preserve the vote unless there is no other remedy. And so in Pennsylvania, essentially, you have the situation where they allowed local boards of election to sign ballots, allow voters who didn't sign their absentee ballots to come in and sign their ballots. And Democratic counties encouraged it. Republican counties did not. And so you increase the Democratic vote in these counties, more likely than not, by allowing these voters to come in. And the Trump argument is this is an equal protection claim. You should treat all the voters the same. The law said you can't sign your ballot. Therefore, you should reject them. And my suspicion is, and I'm not alone here, even some of the lawyers close to the Trump campaign say this, their suspicion is what the courts would do is say, no, what you need to do is allow these other voters to come in and sign their ballots because the government told these voters to come do this and your vote would be counted. We don't want to throw out their votes. It otherwise was a lawful vote, but for that technical requirement. And so that's probably not going to go their way. But this case, this one, actually is a credible case here in Georgia. If what they show is true, they have found enough votes that exceed the margin of victory of Joe Biden, plus exceed the number of people who didn't vote in that case, in that race. And that would show that Georgia, there was either vote fraud or just gross incompetence at the state level in conducting the election. Now, the state disputes this, and that's important. The state disputes it. They say there's a reason for each of these people voting and that they were lawful votes. But this is the first one that's made it to court. I'm being blasted by a lot of people for not paying attention to the testimony at the state legislature. Well, I'm not paying attention to that because it really wasn't challenged testimony under oath where they were going to be penalized for saying something they didn't want to hear. The Republicans in Georgia aren't going to penalize a Republican activist for coming in and making wild claims under oath. They're just not. Same in Michigan and in Arizona with these affidavits. But these claims have made it now into court. And if they're lying under oath, this judge will penalize them. That's why you've got to take this seriously, unlike these other claims. If the Trump campaign, this is one of the things I don't think a lot of Trump voters understand. There's been a lot of incompetence on the Trump team. And frankly, I think there's been serious incompetence with the Georgia Republican Party. And this is one of the things that may stymie this effort. See, the signature verification process in Georgia was actually open to the public. You couldn't not deny someone the right to observe it. And the Republican Party in Georgia is claiming that they were shut out of it. They weren't allowed to observe it. The Secretary of State this morning, Brad Raffensperger, is blowing that up, saying not only was that not true, we told them that if anybody does stymie you from doing this, let us know and we will intervene. And they never did. Not only that, under Georgia law, your time to challenge absentee balloters is up until 5 p.m. the day before the election, and the Republican Party did not do that. So the state Republican Party did not do any of the things it should have done for its part to ensure the integrity of the election before the election, and is now essentially throwing Brad Raffensperger and Brian Kemp under the bus to distract from the fact that it screwed up. And that may be part of the problem here with this. There is an argument the state can make saying all of these things should have been challenged by the Republicans prior to the election. If they were that upset about it and they had the list, they had the right to challenge, now is not the time to challenge. That's a legitimate argument. That doesn't distract from the fact that there may actually be legitimate grievances here that people shouldn't have voted, but that's where we are with the state of play here. This is the first credible case. Had the lawyers, and by the way, this is a completely different legal team from the standard Trump legal team. This is not the Rudy Giuliani effort here. This is a completely separate case. And this is not the, Sidney Powell effort. The Sidney Powell effort was laughed out of court. Now, here's what's so notable about the Sidney Powell effort. The judge threw it out of court yesterday, saying that you sued in the wrong court and your time to sue, you should have sued sooner. And a lot of the Trump campaign is saying, as I point out, that she made a bunch of factual errors. Well, the judge didn't rule those things. The judge did not actually issue the ruling saying I'm throwing it out because all your facts are wrong. He can't do that without a deep dive into the evidence you're hearing. But he actually did that from the bench. If you listen to it, he was as dismissive of their actual claims as the state was. For example, one of the things the Sidney Powell campaign effort alleges is that 96,600 people had their ballots, they cast their ballots by absentee vote, and they were counted, but then the individual counties in which they registered them didn't add them. It didn't log them in. So essentially there are 96,600 votes that were counted, but then not designated in paper trail to the county, the chain of custody of the ballot. And so those ballots should be thrown out. That's way more than the margin of victory. But here's the issue. What actually happened is they showed this list of absentee ballots. And I believe, by the way, the expert for this is the same guy who said that there was fraud in these Michigan precincts when it turned out those precincts were in Minnesota. I think it's the same guy. But he saw a C next to all of these ballots and assumed the C meant counted. Actually, the C meant canceled. There were 96,600 absentee ballots in the state of Georgia that were canceled. And the Powell team was clueless and didn't realize that, which is why I think the Sidney Powell stuff is just nonsense. This whole algorithm stuff is nonsense. So here comes the Trump team now completely overshadowed by Sidney Powell's nonsensical Kraken BS. And they actually have names of voters who voted in Georgia who should not have been on the rolls for a variety of reasons, or so they say. If what they say is real and credible, then this could potentially throw out Georgia. Now, let's fast forward here. How does this play out? Let's say you throw out Georgia's electoral college votes over this lawsuit. It's still not enough to stop Joe Biden from becoming officially president-elect. Even without Georgia and even without Pennsylvania, frankly, Joe Biden is going to be president-elect. Pennsylvania, you're not going to see, I don't think, the Supreme Court decertify the results of Pennsylvania. If they did, I mean, that really would be big news. But right now you got Joe Biden as president-elect with 306 electoral college votes. You get rid of Pennsylvania's electoral college votes. That brings you down to 286. If you do get down to Georgia, you get 270. So if he were to get rid of Georgia and get rid of Pennsylvania, Joe Biden still has 270 electoral college votes, and he wins anyway. But that's not to say, finally, we do have a credible case here. It's one worth paying attention to, assuming they can litigate it. The burden is on them, though. The burden is not on the state to show that these voters should be excluded. And remember, the presumption once a voter has voted is that their vote should count, because there's an arsenal of legal tools available to campaigns to stop voters from ever getting into the ballot booth. You can challenge the list of electors. You can challenge the absentee voters. You can challenge the signatures. All of this stuff you can do before the election. And the Republican Party didn't do it. So there are lots of ways a judge could say, yeah, you may have a valid claim, but it's too late to pursue it. But still, that would show us there were massive irregularities in Georgia. And what is notable here, and this is a point you need to take home, they haven't shown this in any other state. They've made claims in these other states, but they've never taken any of those claims into court. That they've taken them into court here in Georgia with a different legal team is significant, and everyone should pay attention to it and not just automatically dismiss it as being supportive of the president and frivolous. There are legitimate claims they're making under oath in court here in Georgia. It's about time, but it may be